Good evening and good evening to you. Welcome to WeatherBrains episode number 768 for October 5th, 2020, the year that never ends. It's the pre-show, that magical, marvelous time of the program where we do three things. We share boring personal stories, humorous anecdotes, and what else do we do? Say outrageous things. And it's where we do a couple little logistical notes, like put the embed code over on live.bigbrainsmedia.com because some people watch over there, and our master control takes that. And now we're going to get the guests on here. And I think Bill Murray is out tonight. I believe he is a little under the weather. Let's see. Let me be sure I got that embed code here. But I do believe we have a fun show tonight. All right. 7:50 p.m. I do believe it is correct. Let me double check it. And actually, it's not correct. Phooey. Phooey, phooey, phooey. Let's tell you what, let's get the guests on. Let's do that. And then I'll fix the embed code problem over there. Hurricane in the Gulf always makes life interesting. We have Delta, which is now a hurricane. All right, so now we've got the regulars with an invite. And let's go back to my little embed code problem here. All right, let's get the code. Let's try this thing one more time. Hope you've had a good week and a good weekend. Okay. I'm having some real problems with the FTP program that I use, which is very odd. Which means that if some people use that site and master control does, they won't be able to access it. Maybe I can make it work another way here. Sometimes you have to be inventive. You have to invent things on the fly. Use an FTP program called Transmit, which normally is reliable as a rock. So let's see how we can do this. Might have an idea. Let's see if by chance I'm going to do some renaming here real quick. And I was able to rename it. Let's see here. Here's Aubrey. Aubrey, how are you?
James, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Perfect.
Okay. So we just made that work. That's good. All right. The embed code crisis is finished. had an embed code crisis, but I think we're okay now.
Fortunately, I don't know what any of that means.
I don't either. That's probably why it's not working. Let's see.
Hello, Jennifer.
Hello, how are you?
Fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Now, to be on live.bigbrainsmedia.com, I have to stick the embed code for the show over there. And I was having an issue, but the issue has been resolved, and we are now live there and on broadcast stations all across the globe. Jen, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Good.
All right.
Little hurricane in the Gulf.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
My schedule just picked up a little bit.
This thing's probably going to blow up a little. You know, the NHC is conservative in their intensity forecast, which I can totally understand. But I wouldn't be shocked if this kind of ramped up maybe a little heavier than they're forecasting. We'll see. We'll see. Maybe a category 4 or something like that. And the question is, you know, we've had case studies where we've had big hurricanes like that reach 4 or 5 status, and then they really fizzle hard on the approach to the coast in October. Like Lily did that. Opal did that to some degree. Opal was a big storm, but Opal, I think, was a 5, then it weakened to a 3 at the time of landfall. But these October storms, now Michael didn't do that. You know, you got case studies on both sides where Michael did not weaken. But in theory, with the SSTs and strong southwest winds aloft, it should, you know, come on down. But it's one of the greatest struggles in the forecasting business. All right, so I've got to invite these guests here. I got to get Aid a lot on here. I mean, I'm excited when he's on the show here. Has he been on the show before?
He has to have.
Surely. He's like.
It must have been a while though. I don't remember anything.
Let's see here. All right, here's his address. Let me get him and our other guest on here. And then we should be good to go. And I got to remember Bruce Jones. See, Murray typically does all this stuff, and I don't. All right. So James and Lon have both been invited. And maybe I think Troy will get Bruce in on here. So hopefully we're good to go here. Okay.
So the Tornado Talk boys they're watching right now, and they have commented on apparently I'm wearing a rat. They call this a rat. I'm like, no, that's a Nittany lion. Thank you very much. So they pick on me by calling it a rat.
Wow.
I know. Pick it on your mom.
That's no way to treat your mother.
No, it's not. You tell them, Aubrey. Now they're picking.
Come on, guys.
Rat. Come on. Can you hear us okay? Yolan.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
All right. Hi, Lon.
Good.
Great to see you.
We made it.
Yay.
You are now at the pinnacle of your career right here. And if you believe that, got some swamp to say. Uh-oh. We have an intellectual joining the crowd now. Notice he's not talking, and he's got a snake behind him and some guy playing a guitar.
Hi, James.
Hey there.
What? No. Explain what
muted.
that was. Unmute and explain what that was.
Yeah, you're muted, man.
Okay. We do my Sunday small group on Sunday mornings. I have a wide range of crazy backgrounds for that. So I figure never a dull moment around here.
Okay.
How are y'all doing?
Doing great.
Good. What's happening in Tulsa town?
Just banging away on a thesis, actually. So yay me.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Ew.
I told you there's an intellectual that has joined the crowd here. So
And James, that's an emergency management, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Okay, cool.
That's awesome.
And I
Wow.
applied for the PhD program. So
Wow.
Yeah.
The doctor is in the house. The doctor. All right, let's get this thing rolling here.
Hey, Lon Curtis.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, sir. We live so far apart.
I know. We got to, maybe I can fly up and see you sometime, about 15 miles away.
It'd be a good idea.
All right, here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
WeatherBrains is brought to you by the great folks at Midland Weather Radio. Every home, school, and business should have a NOAA Weather Radio, the official voice of the National Weather Service.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is WeatherBrains, episode number 768, the weekly show that's all about weather. This is for the 5th of October, 2020. And you know what this is? It is the year that never ends. And there's another hurricane in the Gulf, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But I see some familiar faces here. Nate, welcome back.
Howdy. How are y'all?
Where you been, man? What's happening? You escaped us last week.
I escaped last week, had little people running around and needed to tend to that. So sometimes you got to deal with that, but good to be back.
Little people running around. I have been there. Troy, you got little people running around in your office there?
I hope not. But if they're here, they got in the house by accident. No, it's pretty quiet around here, and myself and Lon Curtis's territory in Central Texas. And what an honor it is to have you with us tonight, Lon. I mean, we're so far apart, about 14 miles or so. But no, it's quiet in Central Texas. So
We like it that way.
yeah, that's exactly right, Lon.
Quiet is good. I see Aubrey Urbanowitz, and boy, the leaves and the colors, are they starting to pop in the Shenandoah Valley?
They absolutely are. Not so much in the valley. They're more so in our West Virginia mountains, but I'm actually taking off on Wednesday to take the parents up to West Virginia. We're going to do a lot of stuff, some fantastic color, and the ski resorts do a scenic chairlift in the summer and fall months. So I'm excited to do that at one of the local resorts. So that'll be fun, and we get to see that great color. It is coming along so nicely.
So plug your Instagram feed for those that want to see your photos. I know you'll be taking.
Okay, so let me double check what it is. It is.
You don't know your Instagram feed handle?
I just want to make sure I have it, because sometimes I spell out weather, but this is WXAUBS Travel. So WXAUBS Travel. So posted some cool flowers. We still have enough warmer temperatures. It's surprising, after we had a very early frost in mid-September, but it wasn't a heavy killing frost. So the flowers are still going. We still have a lot in bloom, and then with the warmer temperatures for mid-month, and then we've got the cool nights and the sunny days. So yes, you can follow along, and I'll show you some great fall color and maybe some places to put on your travel list that you want to hit up. West Virginia, I do believe, rivals New England. It's probably right behind New England as far as some of the fall color.
I love the photographs that you post this time of the year. So go follow Aubrey on Instagram, and that will be your window to the world, your window to the fall colors, because some of us don't get out much. Jen, the colors started to pop in Ohio.
They are. It's starting to look really beautiful here. We had some good rain Sunday, and then it cooled off. It was in the 50s today, and then we're supposed to get a little warming trend the next few days, but it is really looking pretty here, and we're quiet too. Nothing really happening. I don't even think we're going to get much of the tropical moisture from Delta this far north, but we're just kicking back with some quiet weather, and 70s coming our way again, which is fine by me because I'm cold today. So I've got my Penn State Nittany Lion swag on, the Nittany Lion, for those who want to call it something else.
Well, Jennifer, I was going to say, Jen, we were cool. We were cool here in Central Texas not too long ago, and I'm proud to say I did see one leaf fall from the tree in the front yard. That was last Thursday at 1:30 in the afternoon. That one leaf fell.
I'm glad you made note of that.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah.
Come on up to Virginia, Troy.
Let me warn everybody, before the show is over, I'm going to be asking you, and again, we're doing this on October 5th, your peak intensity, sustained winds for Delta, your best guess. at some point during its life cycle and the point of landfall. And we will judge everybody next week. And the winner gets
Nothing.
a free print from Aubrey.
Yeah. Aubrey, we've been here long enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So who is introducing our guest this evening? Is it Troy or Jen or who?
I am
Nate?
introducing. Yeah, I am
Yeah,
introducing
yeah.
Lon.
Okay.
So
well,
I am all ready to go. Yeah, I'm excited about having Lon Curtis on. We tried to get you on about 4 or 5 weeks ago, and now we got you here, and I'm so excited. I met Lon Curtis 4 years ago when I interviewed him for the Tornado Talk podcast about the Gerald F5. A native Texan, Lon Curtis grew up in Belton, about 40 miles south of Waco, and he was 6 years old at the time of the 1953 tornado at Waco, where 114 people died, almost 600 people were injured. He always thought he would become a meteorologist and then made a little detour and earned his law degree from SMU in Dallas, worked as a police legal advisor for 2 years, and then a felony criminal prosecutor for 24 years in Bell County, Texas. And then Gerald happened, and we're going to talk to him all about that event. And then he became a broadcast meteorologist on KWTX TV, retired in 2011. And Lon Curtis, you're going to tell us the rest of the story. It is my honor to welcome you to WeatherBrains.
Well, thank you. The rest of the story is I retired so I could play a lot of golf. And and the more I
Nothing wrong
played,
with
the worse I got. So I had to come back to weather. That was my first love, and it's great to be able to watch what WeatherBrains does weekly, and it's really great to be part of it tonight. I'm thrilled.
Lon, thanks for being on the. Who's going to introduce James? Whose job is that now? I'm
James
afraid
has
to,
already
because
run away. He's already
Yeah,
turned off his camera. He might as well
man.
just be gone.
Smart man.
That's
wow,
right.
he ran.
There he is.
I can badmouth James for a couple of seconds to welcome him
Please
onto the
do.
program.
Go.
All right. Chief meteorologist at Fox 23 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, working on a master's degree in a what was that? Electrical basket weaving? Oh, no. Emergency management. Yeah, that's an actual real major. And going to be heading on to a PhD program, assuming his committee doesn't trash his thesis. James Adelot, welcome to the program. Glad to have you here.
It's great to be here. I brought my Nate Johnson beard. Does that look nice?
Oh yeah.
So the question is, do you have one of the patron saint of correlation coefficient shirts hanging around somewhere?
I actually do not.
They make a shirt just for you and you don't even have one? Come on.
I think he sold 4 of them too. So, I mean,
Well, I
that's a big
bought
demand.
3. Who bought the 4th one?
I guess that had to be my mom.
There you go. James is he's known on Twitter for commenting about dual pole radar and stuff like that. We're fellow radar geeks. So somebody decided to make a shirt. And I bought 3 of them, but the cats are chewing on one of them and use the other one for a dog toy. So welcome to the program.
Wow.
Seems appropriate.
Oh,
Good
he's
to be
also a
here.
pilot. So we're going to talk pilot stuff too.
Okay.
Okay.
There you go.
All right.
That's awesome.
Jim, let's
All
talk
right.
to Lon Curtis, the actual classy guy on the program.
Well, I think Lon should just take us back to the beginning. So tell us about your experience with the Waco, Texas of 1953.
Oh goodness. I was 6 years old at the time, and it'd been storming off and on during the day, 40 miles south of Waco in Belton. And what I remember most about that particular day, the day of the tornado, is standing behind my mother. She was at the front door of the house. The neighbor had just arrived home from his place of employment, and his name was Morris Perkins. And you can do a search on Morris Perkins. He was General Wainwright's personal pilot in World War II. He had left the military and was working in Belton. And as he arrived home, my mom opened the screen door, and I was behind her, and I could see the wind was blowing and the rain was falling. And she stuck her head out the door, and she said, "You see, these clouds were racing. I mean, racing north. Uh, and she said, somebody's going to have a tornado. That was about 4:20 in the afternoon, 4:20, 4:30. And later that evening, a couple hours later, we began to hear about the tornado that had hit Waco. And, the news in those days, they had to, if there was going to be any visual imagery, had to be shot, brought back, developed, and then put on. We didn't have live stuff. And so it was really the next day that people began to see the devastation in Waco. My grandfather, who was a volunteer fireman in Belton, was among those who went to Waco to help with recovery efforts up there over a several-day period. And there are today, and this has been discovered in the last few years, there are photographs at Baylor University in a history exhibit that they maintain of the damage in Waco, photographs made immediately following the tornado. And if you ever doubted the power of an F5 or an EF5 tornado, what happened in downtown Waco would change your mind. It was incredible damage. And of course, 114 people died and almost 600 were injured, many of those critically.
Wow. So after that momentous event for your childhood, you thought you were going to pursue meteorology, and yet you became an attorney and served as a Texas prosecutor. I'm fascinated by your story. Tell us how all that came about, and tell us a little bit more about being a prosecutor in Texas.
Okay, well, the weather bug really bit. The Waco tornado was the beginning, but the station that I eventually worked for in Waco, KWTX, hired a guy named Dale Milford to be the weatherman. A couple of years after the Waco tornado, Dale Milford had been a forecaster in the Air Force during the Korean War. And he had a career in Waco and then went to WFAA in Dallas, where he finished out his career. And then he ran for Congress and served 2 years in two terms, 4 years in Congress. So I was exposed to what I consider really good television weather. The station in Austin, which at the time was KTBC, hired a University of Texas meteorology professor. They had a Department of Meteorology in the late 50s and into the 60s. His name was Kenneth Jean, Jehn. And what I found unique about his weathercast was he started every single weathercast with a 500 millibar map. And he used that to explain the evolution of the surface features. And after KTBC moved on to another meteorologist, I believe Kenneth Jean was, I believe he was instrumental in the beginning of the AMS broadcast certification for broadcasters. And then there was a succession of good, really good television weathercasters, meteorologists, some of them. And so by the 1970s, even though I was studying law, I had my head in the clouds, and you could buy in those days for $20, you could buy from AMS, you could buy the preprint volumes with all the research papers from a conference. And so I would spend $20 or so a year and buy the severe storms conference papers and read those. And it was mostly Greek to me, but that really furthered my interest. And so I had the career as a prosecutor, and I had meteorology as a burning interest. And I was also, speaking of burning, I was assistant chief of the volunteer fire department in Belton. So I had a dream. I'll share this. It'll guarantee that I'm certified as nuts, but I had a dream one night.
Show title.
I had a dream one night. I was in the midst of a criminal trial, and the dream was that in the midst of the trial, I'd gone to bed. It was nighttime. There was a fire at a motel. I had to go to the fire. I went to the fire. I was assistant chief at the fire. About 5, 6 a.m. We put the fire out, and on the way home, there was a tornado warning. So that sort of wrapped up all three of them: prosecution, firefighting, and weather, all in one dream. And it just, Gerald was the key to moving from being a storm spotter and a storm chaser to having a career in television weather, which is what I really wanted.
Well, since you mentioned Gerald, we love to spend some time talking about that event because it was so momentous. You were there from the beginning to the end, following, and some folks may not know that this was a devastating tornado that was part of an outbreak that lasted about 40 miles, right? So can you talk us through how your day started? Well, even a couple of days before, what you were following a couple of days before, and then how your day started and what was the atmospheric setup? Just kind of take us through that day.
Okay, well, 2 days before the Gerald storm, I went to Oklahoma, southern Oklahoma, chased storms up there. That was on a Sunday. And I saw several tornadoes, made some still photographs. There was one really interesting tornado that was anti-cyclonic. So I got back home late at night, and the next day, Monday, was Memorial Day. And I went back all the way, stopped at the Weather Service office in Fort Worth. You could do that in those days, and talked to them and looked at the weather charts, and went up to the Red River, and nothing happened until right at sunset, well north of the Red River. And so I had to go to work the next day. So I drove all the way back to Temple, and got up the next morning, the 27th of May, and walked outside to get the newspaper about 6:30 in the morning. And I had never before or since felt so much humidity in the air. It was oppressive humidity at 6:30 in the morning. The dew point at Temple was 78 at that hour. That would be unusual unless you were right on the coast in Texas. And so I sort of had this feeling that all that driving I'd done the last few days to and from Oklahoma, and what went through my mind is, today they're coming to me. And they did. So where do you want to go from there?
Well, maybe just kind of early in the day, were you at the TV station? Or were you working as a prosecutor still?
That's right. I was working as a prosecutor. So I went to the office, got there around 8 o'clock in the morning, and at some point between 8, pardon me, and 9:30, I did a quick surface analysis, used the computer, drew a surface map so that I had some idea of what was really going on. And I don't know, 10:30, 11 o'clock, I went in and told the DA, my boss, I'm thinking I may have to be out this afternoon. I've already looked at this cases going to grand jury, which was part of my duties to present them the next day to the grand jury. And so I told him, I said, if I disappear this afternoon, I'll be chasing storms. And my boss was Cappy Eads, who at one time was president of the Texas DA's Association. And then from there, he became president of the National District Attorneys Association. So Cappy said, okay, well, you got your grand jury stuff ready. That's okay. But I got a question. I got a request for you. And I said, what's that? He said, if you go chasing storms, take me with you. And I said, absolutely, I will. Unfortunately, I never got back to the office to follow through on that. So I was solo that day. I went over to Temple, pardon me, 11:30 or so in the morning to drop off film, slide film that I had shot up in Oklahoma on Sunday. And when I came out of the photo shop, I looked north on 31st Street. It was just almost noontime, and there was this cumulonimbus cloud. I've never seen one like it since. I'd never seen one before, but it literally went straight up until it anviled out due north of Temple. I didn't know at that time how far. So I grabbed a sandwich from a sandwich shop, went home, fired up what passed for computerized weather radar at that time, and saw what looked to me like a developing circulation southwest of Waco, north of Temple, put on street clothes rather than office clothes, and headed out up to Moody, about 20 minutes north toward Waco. And about 1:15 in the afternoon, I drove up on the first tornado of the day.
And how many tornadoes did you see that day?
8.
8.
Yeah.
Wow.
There were more, but the Gerald storm was the Gerald tornado was the 7th, and there was one after that that's not in the official record. When I decided that where I was in Gerald was probably a mile, at least 3/4 of a mile from where the tornado was occurring, and there were pieces of 2x4s falling out of the sky along with big hail. And so I decided to go on south to get away from the storm. And I'd gone about 3-4 miles south of Gerald, and there was a tornado off to the west side of Interstate 35. Didn't amount to much. About the same time, the Gerald tornado, which had been in rain wrap, you literally just couldn't see it as I left to go on south. The Gerald tornado came out of rain wrap about 5 miles west of the interstate, and I could see it again. And by then it was moving away from I-35. So I thought I'd go on south. I had to wait for the small tornado between me and Georgetown to get out of the way. And by the time I got down to Cedar Park, the tornado, another tornado had gone through there. Had literally ripped open the roof of a great big supermarket and torn up the town, torn up the traffic lights, trees down. So I knew I was done chasing at that time. And so I stopped. I pulled into a parking space at a convenience store. I'd been chasing at that point. I'd been chasing over 3 hours. And I went in the convenience store and I went to the cooler and got me a couple of beers, and I went up to the counter and put them on the counter. And the guy said, "Sir, I'm sorry. I can't ring those up. Our power's off." And I looked in my pocket and I gave him a $5 bill and I said, "Will this cover it?" And he said, "Oh yeah." And I said, "When the power's back on, ring it up. The rest's yours." So I sat out front and watched the rescue efforts and drank a beer or two.
Yeah.
Lon, Troy here. One thing, and being from Austin, and that same day on that Tuesday, I remember very well exactly what Lon's saying. It was unbelievable. The dew point. I mean, the dew point in the upper 70s that morning. I remember slapping you upside the head. I mean, it was something that Lon, and he's not overstating this, folks. That dew point, that's the highest I can ever recall it being up to that date. And since then, I never recall anything like that in Austin. So it's pretty amazing. But Lon, back when you first saw that cumulonimbus building up generally in the direction of Waco, one of the interesting things that day, and you've done a lot of research on this, was the wind pattern aloft was relatively weak that day.
Yes, sir.
And at least initially, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, and it seemed like I'd remember it, but my brain's going, you're still a young man. But at the same time, I remember that a tornado watch was tracked sort of northeast from where that cell was forming, but very quickly a watch had to be issued south when that storm started moving back to the southwest. Am I correct? Do I have that in my memory?
Well, I think basically you do. I don't remember when the first tornado watch was issued. I know that the slight risk for severe came all the way down to almost to Burnett County and maybe into Burnett County.
Yeah.
I don't think it included Travis, but it might have.
Yeah.
There was a enhanced risk up in the Longview area, and nothing ever really happened up there. All the big time chasers went to Longview, which is probably a good thing because there weren't that many people spotting or chasing in Central Texas.
Well, I do believe the Storm Prediction Center initially the watch went northeast, but very quickly when they saw those cells were actually migrating to the south or to the southwest, the watch very quickly was extended back down into Austin. But really an amazing day because again, a weak front moving into the area, but the upper level wind pattern was not one necessarily you would expect to have seen with a tornado event like that.
That's correct. And Steve Corfidi, Corfidi, was one of the forecasters at Storm Prediction Center. I think he issued the watch.
Yeah.
And the tornado watch. And he later did some research into the apparent south-southwest motion of the storm. There's some interesting research that's been done with computer simulation that anybody that really wants to dig into this ought to take a look at. Adam Houston and Robert Wilhelmsen wrote several papers that were published, I think most of them in the monthly weather review of AMS, American Meteorological Society, that go into computer simulations. And what they posit from their research is each updraft, each storm actually tried to move southeast, but there were new storms forming to the southwest that kept the tornado genesis going on. So as I say, if you really want to delve into it, and I should mention that the AMS journals after 1 year are free. They're online, so you don't have to subscribe to them anymore. There's just a year lag before you can access those.
So, Lon, on Gerald, for those who may not know a lot about that, it's one of the most violent tornadoes ever. F5, slow mover. And can you talk a little bit more about what you know about why the damage was so tremendous at the Double Creek Estates? Was it due to the slow movement of it?
Yes, the tornado, that particular tornado transition, there was a small, almost pencil thin tornado about 5 miles north of Gerald at a town called Prairie Dell, a small village really. And there was about a 5-second interruption of that vortex, the small one, before the Gerald tornado developed. And there's actually video of that. One of the photographers for KWTX who had been following the storms actually caught that transition. I don't think he realized what he caught, but the storm became more violent. Probably what happened was the vorticity that was in the atmosphere as each new cell developed was being multiplied, and within a couple of minutes of the transition from the small thin tornado to the developing Gerald tornado, it went into a multi-vortex stage where there were at least four smaller vortices rotating around the main funnel that came down from the cloud. And then that continued to develop and expand And it was, I believe the final report was that the path was 1,400 yards wide at one point. I know it was at least 1,000 yards wide, and it did move slowly. It was moving 12 miles an hour. So the violent winds, which one of the things I think that's really misunderstood about tornadoes is that it's just a circular wind motion, but the wind's not only going around, it's going up. And it is the around and up motion that causes a lot of, if probably most of the damage in violent tornadoes. And so you had a slow moving violent tornado over a residential subdivision that was mostly relatively new homes. And it literally left slabs, just slab concrete where the home had been over and over and over and over.
We probably should have invited Brian Peters to be on the show tonight. You know, Brian was on this show for a long, long time. He was on the assessment team that came in to rate the tornado line. I don't know if you know Brian or have met him before.
I met Brian there. I was down there, I believe it was the Saturday after, and I visited with him for a while. And I was there. Also present at that time was Tim Marshall, who is a trained meteorologist and also a structural engineer, double degreed. So Tim just happened to be down there at the same time I was, the Saturday after the tornado, and he walked me through the various good points of the construction and some that weren't so good, like there's a base plate. If you're building on a slab, there's a 2x4 that is either bolted or nailed into the concrete. If it's nailed, it's not near as sturdy as if it's bolted. But what he found that day, in the Saturday after the tornado, was it didn't matter. The bolted 2x4s, the base plates, were gone right along with those that were nailed. And so I think the key thing that people need to understand about really violent tornadoes like Gerald or like Joplin, Missouri, is the motion is not just the horizontal wind, but the upward forcing that literally takes your roof off. And if the roof comes off, the walls fall down. Because it's all built in one unit. So I've never seen anything like it, and quite frankly, I don't ever want to see anything like that again.
Lon, what was the highest wind that they estimate? I know it was an EF5, as Jen points out, but what was the highest wind? I thought it was around 270, 280. But I just kind of want, and there was some disagreement on that. I think a little bit, wasn't there, in the survey crew?
There's even still disagreement. There are meteorologists who maintain that the slow movement of the tornado caused damage. You know, the problem we have is we impute this kind of damage. The winds must have been in this range, and there is science that supports that, but it is not 100% accurate. So the slow movement of the tornado probably contributed to the extent of the damage, but I'm one of those who believes that the winds were in excess of 230, 240 miles an hour at least. And
how long, given the size of that thing, Lon, I mean, I think the big story was how long those winds hung over that. And this is not a quick moving tornado.
No,
it was not. And they say this tornado, if you can visualize the line you mentioned, 230, 240, 250, this hung in this neighborhood for a couple of minutes, right?
Yes. Yeah, there and you know, there's one of the things that Tim Marshall commented about the Saturday after when I was with him was where the stoves, where the hot water heaters, where the air conditioning units, because it was all gone. And now I didn't witness this, but I was told later that a rancher 6 miles southwest of Gerald who several days later was out checking on his cattle, found this mass of metal. And that was the air conditioners, the stoves, all the metal units that were in the houses. And apparently the tornado, whether it lifted those up or just rolled them along the ground, I don't think anyone knows for sure. But
Well,
it was incredible damage.
Well, I guess one of the other interesting things that I've heard, and Jen, I keep interrupting you. I promise.
No,
I'm gonna-
please.
but
No,
but one
I
of the
need you
things
to
that
talk.
I heard, Lon, that I think is interesting is that there were a number of vehicles in Gerald of which we never could identify them via their VIN plates because there was no VIN plate to be able to find. I mean, there were a number of vehicles we know were in the path of that tornado, but we have no idea. They simply were shredded apart and apparently scattered so far that a number of them were untraceable, essentially.
I can't vouch for all the detail in that, but I do know that that one of the families, the husband, the wife, and the two sons who were killed.
Is that the Igo family?
The Igo family.
Yeah.
Mr. Igo had a car repair shop, and there were apparently several vehicles at his house that he was working on there. And those, along with, I think, all the other vehicles from the homes in that area, my understanding was they were in a mass of metal, a big rolled up ball, down where the creek, the Double Creek Estates is the name of the place that got hit. And down there, a mile and a half, 2 miles away, they found all these cars rolled up. The tornado weakened slowly as it moved away. And it deposited debris as it got weaker and couldn't carry it along, whether it was lofted or whether it was rolling it. But it was horrible.
What was the warning process like from the Weather Service and from the local media there, Lon and Troy, both of you? How'd the warning process work?
I'll let Lon address that.
And I mentioned. Okay, I'm breaking up here. I didn't hear all of that.
Yeah, I guess James was asking about the warning process, Lon. That's also an interesting area because Williamson County Gerald belongs to the National Weather Service Austin San Antonio and their CWA, and you go across the county line into Bell County, and that belongs to the Weather Forecast Office at Fort Worth, which I guess made it kind of a challenge anyway. But James was asking about how the warnings were.
Well,
yeah, from both the Weather Service perspective and from the local media perspective.
I know for a fact, because the MIC, the meteorologist in charge at Fort Worth at the time, told me personally that they made 3 coordination calls to the New Braunfels office between 3 and 3:30, telling them, we want to hand this off to you. It's coming your way. The last time, and this is in the NOAA service assessment. The person working the radar at New Braunfels that day was an intern. And the service assessment, and I separate this completely from the current staff at the New Braunfels office. The NOAA assessment was very critical of the New Braunfels office service leading up to the Gerald tornado. But I will say this, I arrived in Gerald about 3:25, 3:30 in the afternoon, and it appeared to me that everybody in town knew the fire department siren was going off over and over and over. So I think there were some dropped balls from a Weather Service perspective, but I'm not sure that they in any way contributed to the death toll.
In my understanding,
was
Lon,
Skip Ely still in Fort Worth, Troy, and Lon? Was Skip Ely the MIC at the time, or who
Yes,
was in
sir.
Fort
pretty sure.
Worth?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Lon, that siren in Gerald is also interesting, if my memory serves me correctly. That as that tornado approached, and like Lon said, this thing was a pencil thin tornado coming south through Bell County, and then it just like it is hopping over the CWA there, and all of a sudden it goes violent. But apparently, I'm told that siren in Gerald was actually pulled by a volunteer firefighter, just based on the initial tornado warning, what was coming out of the Fort Worth area. And he just let it run. And there are a lot of people who said that here you have just a volunteer firefighter that's sitting there manning that siren and turned it on. And they believe that for as many lives as we lost, the 27 that day in Gerald, it may have saved a lot of other folks in the process.
Yeah, all these storms were from the one that was the first one that I found between Moody and Waco. They were moving no more than 12, 15 miles an hour. And by the time you get down to Gerald, it's been going on for 2 hours plus.
Yeah.
So I don't think there was any lack of information as to the threat that was approaching. In fact, there were people, when I got to Gerald, it looked like the whole town was outside looking north at the approaching tornado. And it was still 3 or 4 miles north of Gerald at that time. Yeah. And the interstate was dead still, and people out of their cars looking at gawking. If it had come down the interstate, the death toll would have been much higher than where it went.
How was the TV coverage?
Well, I wasn't involved in TV at the time, and obviously I wasn't at home watching, but I know that Bruce Thomas, who I think's been on your show a number of times, Bruce was at Channel 6, KCEN TV, which the studio was between Waco and Temple. And Bruce had a great view of the second tornado of the day, the one that hit Moody. He actually had him roll the big camera out the overhead door, and he was live on the air pointing out the tornado that was moving toward and then through the east side of Moody, while I was trying to get back south of the storm system, coming down the interstate, probably going too fast at the time, but it was 75 miles an hour, and I think the speed limit then was 70, but I had to get back south. And so I missed the Moody tornado, except for seeing it when it got into Bell County just before it dissipated. And then the next one was the F3 at Morgan's Point at Lake Belton, which fortunately dissipated before it came all the way across the lake into Belton, because it would have hit the high school and been a bad deal.
Well, James, the Austin TV stations, by the time it got out of Bell into Williamson County, everything. I was at KTBC Fox 7 here in Austin at the time, and we were live by 3:15 or so. We were live because the tornado warnings were coming out of Bell County, and as Lon pointed out, this thing, there was no question where that thing was headed. And I know all the Austin TV stations. I think the thing that surprised me is something that Lon points out, is that at 5 o'clock that day, and I'll always remember this, that we had the tornado warning, and we had some lead time on it out of New Braunfels, maybe not as much maybe as it should have been, but we had some lead time. And I guess when the first DPS reports came out of 10 fatalities in Gerald, and that was the initial report from DPS at around 5 o'clock, Dick Ellis and myself, Dick was our anchor at Fox 7 at the time. He's passed away since, but on the set, I just remember going, that warning was out. How can we have 10 fatalities? And of course, it ended up being 27 fatalities. And of course, Lon explains why that's the case. There was really no survivable place above ground. And one thing it's interesting that Lon will tell you, and people out here around the country, you say, well, why don't you dig a hole, put a basement down here? Well, that would be easy, except we've got subsoil limestone layers that if you want to build a swimming pool around here, it involves 3 days of blasting. It's just not something that's economical given the threat. But I'll tell you, I think, Lon, in 2020 right now, one of the safest places in Central Texas is Gerald, Texas, with a number of underground shelters, because since that day, many people have built underground shelters in Gerald because they still remember May 27th, 1997.
Well, I think that's probably true, and there was a story that came out of the Gerald event about there was a tornado, I want to say in 88 or 89,
Yep.
around 4:30 in the morning, that came right up the interstate through Gerald. There were several injured and one fatality.
One fatality.
And there was a young couple who were so frightened by that event that they removed, their house was pier and beam. They removed the boards and had dug a hole under their house where they could lay in it if there was another tornado. And my understanding is they went to that. I'm not sure whether their house was damaged or blown away, but they survived. And so it's, Gerald's interesting. It's on high ground. It's almost 1,000 feet above sea level, whereas Georgetown and Round Rock and Austin are 500-600 feet above sea level, and Belton to the north is 540 feet above sea level. So you've got a bit of a ridge there that may affect the turning of the wind in the lowest 1,000 feet of the atmosphere, that may produce more tornadoes. I'm not saying that I believe that. I'm just saying that comes to mind as a possibility.
Hey, did you guys have a WSR? I'm sorry, James, go ahead.
I was going to say the Palmer Divide in eastern Colorado, that's a huge factor in the Denver cyclones, and it's not that high above mean terrain either.
Right.
Did you guys have a WSR 88 or a 57 going during this thing?
It was
Doppler.
It was Doppler.
Yeah, the Granger radar, WSR 88D was, Granger's about no more than 12 miles or so from Gerald, so it had an amazing view. You'll have a lot of trouble trying to find all of that radar data today, because for some reason it mysteriously disappeared soon after the event. Yes.
What?
Sir. It did.
What's the story with this?
There are so many stories about how that happened, and I wouldn't repeat any one of them because I don't know if there's any truth in any of them.
Tell the best one. Tell the most outrageous one.
One of the big ones, and Lon knows this, and Nate just kidded about it. We're chatting between us. You're about, sometimes, Lon, you're lucky if that radar is even up. That's a remote site for Gray Army Air Station. It is a DoD site on the Doppler side, and it has more than its share of problems. And some of you will remember a few years back, this is a real interesting site for something that happened. When was it, Lon? This has been 7 or 8, 9 years ago, that the technicians from up at Fort Hood went out to Granger Lake or Lake Granger, and went out there to work on it one day. And they sit there and go inside the building, and they pop the rack where a lot of this radar stuff is, and there's a rattlesnake inside the rack, inside the equipment rack.
Wow.
Yeah. And they left the building pretty quickly. The radar was out of service until they got someone out there. This guy said, I'm not going in there working on that.
Well, let me make a point about the Granger. The Granger radar was not part of the original WSR 88D deployment, but while they were deploying the civilian version, Fort Hood was hit by a 120-25 mile an hour straight line derecho, and they had all the helicopters out on the flight line. I forget the damage. It was $150 million or something like that, which in the late 1980s was a bunch of bucks. And the military, the Department of Defense, paid for the Granger radar. And to this day, it is maintained by technicians from Fort Hood. And it's online. I mean, you can get it now. And I think one of the really important things about the Granger radar, since that comes up, is it is the closest WSR-88D to places like College Station and Bryan, where Texas A&M is located. Now, Texas A&M has their own radar, but that whole area over there is farther from Houston and much farther from Fort Worth or San Antonio, New Braunfels. So the radar that is closest to the action when there's severe weather off to the east of I-35, all the way over to Bryan College Station, actually almost to Huntsville, is Texas, is the Granger radar. And I think they're doing a better job keeping it online these days. I cross my fingers when I say that.
That is awesome. Well, I want to move real quick to, so Gerald was huge, pivotal point for you to move to TV at this point, right? You started in 1997 and so you quit being a prosecutor and moved to being a TV meteorologist. And talk a little bit, do you have at least one event during your time on television that is the most notable that you tracked on air?
Yeah, the summer following Gerald, I was asked if I wanted to come up to the studio at Waco, the KWTX studio, because Al Moeller, who was a friend of mine, was going to be there to talk about Gerald. Would I like to come up? So I went up, and I was introduced to Virgil Teeter, who was the vice president for news. And Virgil's the one who, after we had visited and Al Moeller had explained his take on Gerald, Virgil and I were chatting, and he said, "Well, you're really into this weather stuff." I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, if we ever needed somebody to fill in just for a short time on air, would you be interested?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd like to do that. I'd have to ask my boss, the DA." And so I left. That was July. I left there thinking, well, that would be really nice, but who knows what'll come of that. And then I was at the state DA's meeting, district attorney, the assistants and all that in Arlington. And September, I came out of there at the end of September, and had a phone message waiting saying, "Virgil is trying to get hold of you desperately. Call him as soon as you can." So I called Virgil, and Virgil said, "We just found out that our weekend guy is moving back to England, he was a native of England, and we need somebody to do weekend weather beginning the first weekend in November. Would you like to do that?" I said, yeah. I'll have to ask the boss, but yeah, I'd love to do that. So I went up there on weekends in October and got introduced to the equipment and how you put a show together and all those things. And the first weekend in November, I was on the air. I continued to prosecute crime in Bell County until I retired the end of May of 2001, and then I went full time. I did weekends from November '97 until June of 2001. I filled in for Rusty Garrett, who was the weeknight guy when he was on vacation or had other commitments. And then I started out doing mornings and noontime, and eventually convinced them that I would be of more use in the evenings if we had severe weather, if I did noon and 5. And they thought that was a great idea. And so I did that until I retired early in 2011. And I, as I say, I played a lot of golf for a few years after that. And then I was drawn back to weather because I love it.
Was there an event during your TV days that you can think of that really kind of popped and something that's memorable for you?
Yes, I was, I don't remember the day of the week, but it was a weekday. It was December 29th, 2006. I was doing noon and 5, and you don't expect severe weather in December, even in Texas. You don't expect it, but you sometimes get it. And beginning about 12 noon, there was a storm coming up, moving rapidly from south to north that appeared to have hook echo. Went across the west part of Bell County. There were no reports of a tornado, but it certainly on radar looked like that. So after I finished the 12 o'clock newscast, I got on the chat with the Weather Service of Fort Worth and told them what I'd seen. And their answer at the time was, we think it's elevated, meaning that there is a circulation, but it's not reaching the ground. And within about 25 minutes, they had issued a tornado warning that was verified for Coryell County, which is north of the Killeen-Fort Hood area. And before that day was over, before that afternoon and early evening was over, there had been 27 tornadoes in Texas, from Bryan College Station and near Gatesville northward to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, as far west as Stephenville, and as far east as the Tyler and Jacksonville area. So a major outbreak of tornadoes. And one of the projects I'm working on, I presented a small amount of this to the Texas Weather Conference in the last week or so, is winter tornado outbreaks in Texas. They tend to be clustered either in central and north central Texas or over in far east Texas. And I believe that you can probably diagnose where they'll be based on the upper air data from the evening before and the morning of the outbreak. There's a distinct difference. If the winds in the first mile or two above ground, if they veer to the southwest, the moisture all goes off into East Texas. If they stay in the south, then you got to worry about central and north central Texas.
Lon, I actually
Lon,
worked that event at NBC5, so I remember it well. Sorry, James.
That's okay. No, Eight-A-Lot used to be a big deal in Fort Worth, Dallas, on Channel 5. James has many leather-bound books, and his home smells of rich mahogany, if you don't know.
Well,
but have you been bitten by a rattlesnake and you scared it off?
Yes. Yes. Isn't that amazing?
That's David Finfrock, right?
Yeah, that snake is lucky it's not a belt.
Well, you know,
now David would have wagged his finger at it and told it not to do that again.
Not to do that again.
Carried it somewhere safe.
You know, when I went to law school at SMU in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, Harold Taft was in his heyday. And Harold Taft was, I don't remember how long he was at WBAP in Fort Worth, but they would tease him. He would do a late night radio deal, and they would tease him about, when Mr. Taft says, now you folks up in Bowie, we got to watch this storm. You can hear the chairs scooting across the ground all the way down in Fort Worth because people are taking his advice. But anyway, that's an aside.
What was your biggest forecast bust, Lon? Biggest forecast bust? Or maybe you got them all right.
Oh, it's been so long since I literally, you're talking about a television bust. I don't remember any. And I'm not saying that to say I didn't. I'm just saying I don't remember them. There were, I'm sure there were some.
Wow, you're good. I could write a book about forecast busts involving.
I was going to say, I'm glad you don't ask that of everybody else here, because I'd have a hard time remembering any that weren't busts.
Yeah. Snow, ice.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, I thought you were
all
talking
of
about
mine
severe
involve
weather.
the warm nose.
Yeah, no, any
always,
kind of weather.
We
Yep.
we went through a period. We went through a period when I was still doing weekends. The Labor Day weekend of the year 2000, Labor Day weekend, temperatures across Central Texas were hitting 112, 113, and I don't think anyone had forecasted it would be quite that high. I know I hadn't, but you when it gets that hot, and we still had some humidity, you really have to start talking to people seriously about this is not something to take for granted. Even if you're out on the lake, if you don't get in the water and cool off, you're going to cook. And so it's fortunately we haven't been quite that hot this year.
And did you have any run-ins with a consultant during your television days?
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Story time.
Yeah, right after the local owners of KWTX sold out to Gray Communications, they sent some consultants in who didn't like anything any of us were doing. And,
imagine that.
And being, I was still somewhat of a novice to television and how things work. So I was really worried after I got my critique, and I went to Virgil Teeter, the news vice president, and I said, they gave me all of this, and they say I don't do this, and I don't do this, and I shouldn't do that. And he said, ignore it. I can only tell that story now that Virgil is out of the business and retired, but he said, ignore it. And so I sort of played along with it for a day or two. And when they left, I went back to that, and the rest consultants. Oh, I have some.
When I was in Dallas, we had a consulting firm called ARD,
Yep.
Audience Research Development. And this guy came in and he said, the secret to rating success is hand gestures. I'm saying, what? And he
I got a couple of hand gestures for you.
I got one for you, buddy.
You're number one.
We're number one.
But it's like, so he gave me this sheet with 30 different hand gestures, and he recommended different types of weather that involve certain hand gestures, like a roll of the hands or hand down. And yeah, I mean, what is this? I mean, so this guy thinks this is going to make us number one here. I mean, so I could write a book about consultants, but that was the most bizarre situation I've ever had.
I wasn't going to tell.
I get a chapter.
I wasn't going to tell this, but the first time I saw video of James Spahn, this was recorded, doing television cut-ins during a major tornado outbreak. At one point, you were almost crawling on the floor because the green screen went all the way down, and you were trying to point out some small area down there that was threatened by a tornado. And that's when I said to myself, that guy is fantastic. Because you knew every little road, every little town, every little hamlet, and you were pointing them out. And I think that's what people want to hear is am I in danger? And the way you do that is you name the places.
Yeah, and part of that's really just being in a market for a long time, Lon. You know that. it's being in a market for a long time. It's like Harold Taft. When I was in Dallas, I couldn't compete with Harold. He knew every little wide spot in the road, and he gets on WBAP at night after the late news and goes on the trucker show, and he knows everything about the culture and the people and the geography. And and I used to drive. I'd drive every day. If I didn't have a school talk, I'd just go drive to learn places. But his equity in that market is, like you say, you can't just come up with that. It just takes a long time. So
well, and it was advantageous to me.
Yeah, sure.
That I grew up in Central Texas. I knew I may not have been in each little town, but I knew where it was. I knew which county it was in, and we were fortunate to hire the current chief now at KWTX, who is a native of the area. Went to school up at Tarleton State and Stephenville, and then down at A&M, and grew up in West Central Texas, so he has the advantage of knowing the roads and the towns and the hamlets and places like that. And I think it really is a challenge if you come into a market and you don't have that in your head already. You have to learn it.
Right.
You know,
Have
just
to go
just
ahead,
getting the
James.
place names right. I mean, just saying place names right is big. Somebody in Fort Worth or Waco not knowing that it's Italy or Alvarado or Rye Vista. I mean,
Yeah.
they're behind the curve already.
Mahia.
Bexar. Bear.
Yes.
How do you say the name of this place? Dairy Queen.
Dairy Queen.
I'll tell another inside joke. I say joke. I mean, it was horrifying. I probably shouldn't say this, but remember the L-1011 that crashed in Dallas in 1985? And,
August 2nd,
it
1985.
was
Yep.
horrific. I was on the air when this happened.
Oh my gosh.
And I had my 2-meter transceiver with me. It was like part of my body. And I started picking up traffic on 88, the Dallas repeater of this horrific situation out at the airport. So I walked back there to the assignment desk, and they weren't from Dallas. They weren't from Texas. I mean, I remember one guy said, "Where's Mesquite?" And I said, "Oh, brother, it's just like, look, guys, I've only been here 2 years. I know more about this place than all you people combined." And the same thing works for news as well. You've got to have some basic knowledge. In the television weather business, half of it is the knowledge of the science, the ability to do forecasting and analysis and communicate weather. But the other half, it's plugging into the culture and understanding the geography and learning these places, and people, the Wesley's booby trap thing got a lot of play. And by the way, they sent us a free they sent us a free shirt that I can't show because this is a family show here.
Wait, they have shirts there?
They do.
They're wet.
As we say in Austin, that's ironical. Yeah.
That doesn't make a lot of sense, but they have shirts at the booby trap. But everybody that lives in Sayre, in Corner, in Bagley, in Summerton, Alabama, they know where Wesley's booby trap is. If I call out the booby trap is a point of reference for a tornado event, they're going to know where that thing is. Where if I get on TV like some pinhead and say the tornado is 14 miles southeast of Jasper, nobody knows where that is. That doesn't mean anything to anybody. That's just a bunch of gobbledygook. So, you got to relate to people.
And every area has those markers. It may not be Wesley's booby trap, but there's always these landmarks. And I think that's something I tell the students that I teach and interns that I've had. Like when you get into a market, really, take the long way out, take another way back. If you're going to school talks, drive around, get a sense of, the road names. That's another tell, right? If I can look at Highway 8384 that runs on the west side of Abilene, nobody calls it 8384. It's the Winters Freeway. Those kinds of things are a tell. And if you, like James, if you get them right, if you know them, that just, it sends your credibility through the roof. It helps people understand, they're not having to think, wait, what is 8384 again? Because that's not what they think about it. If you know those sorts of things, it really makes you more effective as a broadcaster on top of everything else.
Mm-hmm. And my intern deal every summer when these interns, brilliant kids, and look, I have great faith in this next generation. A lot of old farts like me talk ugly about these kids. No, they've got a better work ethic than my generation. They're smarter than my generation. But what I do, I take them into a Walmart in a working class part of the city. And, they're like, what? What's this? I said, just follow me. And I have them engage in conversation with people in that Walmart. And these are people that don't look like them. They don't talk like them. They don't have the same education they have. They don't think like them. They don't vote like them. They are radically different. And if they cannot communicate with people in that Walmart, then you got a real problem being successful on television. The people in that Walmart, that represents the cross section of those people that you serve, and they're going to be watching you. And if you can't handle it, and some of them just can't, they say, I don't want to do this. These people are horrible. I hate these people. Don't go on television. I mean, do,
Yeah.
do something else where you don't have to interact with people, but do us a favor and don't go on television. So that Walmart thing has been a really good indicator of future success among some of these interns in years past.
And a realization too that, the people at the Walmart, we think we've gone to school, we've got fancy degrees and things hanging on the wall and everything else, but the people at Walmart are just as smart as you. They didn't go to school for the thing that you went to school in, right? A doctor working on something isn't a meteorologist. They're a non-expert when they come to that. They may come to the perspective. Recognizing that people are smart. We don't, talking about consultants, we don't talk down to people because people recognize that it's insulting. Talk to people, translate this knowledge that we have into something that's useful and effective, but never talk down to people because they're just as smart, in a lot of cases, smarter than you are. They just didn't go into meteorology as a career.
Lon, what's some of your advice for young people getting in this business?
Oh, wow. Given the fact that there's been this transition toward large corporations owning many stations, I would have to say, if you really could find a station that is locally owned, they will bring you along. They will train you better than if you just dive. You may have to go to a much smaller market, but you will have a better chance of being groomed and taught how to do weather on television than if you try to hire on in a larger market, and if you don't quickly pick up the pace that they want you on, you're out.
Well, James and Nate, for that matter, and James Spann. I remember the days when I was in television. Everybody was climbing on top of each other trying to get to Chicago and New York and places like that. And it's pretty amazing now in 2020 how many people I talk to that are in very small markets. They don't make that much, but they are so happy about where they are. And nowadays, that whole thought about climbing on top of each other to get to huge markets, that's just not, I don't see it anymore. I see people that are very comfortable in small markets and do pretty well. And I have to say what Lon says, and I'm sure James up in Tulsa, same way in the markets that you've been in. Look for those stations that have a tie to their community. This is tough to find nowadays. Lon points it out pretty well. You've got this corporate feel, but I'm going to tell you the people, and I believe Nate's involved in this and helping people understand this, that your station's not going to go far unless you're invested in your local community. And that local community, and this is where I want some time before my life ends that I can go hang out with James when he takes the interns out to Walmart, because I think that's an amazing thing. I would want to see it.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
really want to see it because I think it's one of my James Spann isms. I mean, it's just one of the things that I would have never thought about, but gosh, it really would tell you a lot, James.
It does. So, Dr. Adelot, what's your advice for young
Yeah.
people? You're a man of success.
I'm actually looking at my spreadsheet full of my thesis research data, and the highest correlation factor, the two highest I've got in factors to determine how much you trust your particular local TV meteorologist, are responds to me personally on social media and seems to care about my community. Build a relationship. Nothing's changed. It's just how we build a relationship. That's the key thing, I think.
But James,
you're actually
I
saying
remember
that responding to so James, you're saying that responding to somebody on social media is important then.
Well, I left off the word troll when I put the questionnaire out.
No, people all the time, they mock me because I answer everybody.
Yeah.
And people, I don't have time to do that, man. I've got to,
Well, some of
I
us
don't
have
either.
to sleep more than 20 minutes a night, James. Come on, that's a little slack.
Yeah.
Us
Yeah,
mere
I've not
mortals.
slept- I've not slept
Uh-huh.
since 1973,
Mm.
but I answer everybody. And it is like you make time to do that. And, to me, I think that, look, here's my position on that. I'm honored if they came to me. Think of
Amen.
all the TV weather people in the world, and they chose me. I'm honored. And then some weather people say they get cranky. All these people keep asking me questions and it makes me, what do you instead of just griping about it, how about being flattered that they chose you? So
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
gonna get preachy.
And I
here, I'm
always,
sorry.
if when I think it's I don't know, a question that might just kind of wear me out, I'm thinking, okay, I need to improve my messaging. So that's not a question next time. So I'll answer the question because I think that's is just as much my fault or as somebody not listening.
Well, I always
Yeah.
remember, James, that here in Austin, and it's going out of business now, but Luby's Cafeteria. Lon, you know the Luby's,
Oh
and of course,
yeah.
and people. Well, there's one up the street from K-View here in town on Steck Avenue, and one of the few left, I guess now. And we used to always go over there, and I had people that would ask me, said, "Well, y'all will go over there after the news at 6. Troy, don't you ever get tired of everyone just talking to you and asking you weather questions in line?" And I said, if I ever get tired of that, I keep my butt at the TV station that night and I don't go eat. And I hope it never stops. That's the whole thing that I think you're pointing out, James. You have to be responsive and, and if you want to go hang out and go get in a line at a restaurant, then you better be willing to visit with the folks that brought you,
Man, you got me thinking about Luby's now. There was one down, there was a Luby's down at Collin Creek Mall, and oh, it was so good. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole thing's going out of business, right? I mean, aren't they
Yeah.
shutting down?
I think so. How come you're as skinny as you are and I'm as fat as I am?
Man,
I
I
mean,
need to
come
lose
on, if
20
you
We
ain't
went
pounds.
back to the TV station.
Hey, Lon, do you ever get on to Twitter, the face bag, any of this stuff? You tinker with that, social media?
Oh yeah, I maintain some presence on Twitter and a larger presence on Facebook. I try to daily if I can, and if it's busy weather-wise, more than once a day, put up the Storm Protection Center's day one outlooks. And of course, right now we're dealing with hurricanes and tropical cyclones and things like that. And so I maintain a presence. I got my own website where I've got more weather than anyone would ever want to look at. And uh, and I also I get up early and I try to do at least two 500 millibar analyses by hand.
Ooh.
I get up early and I do the one from the night before, and when the data comes in, I do the one for the morning, 7 a.m. Central, and I learn a lot. You can look. This is from Al Moeller, the late Al Moeller. You can look at someone else's analysis or what the computer drew, and it doesn't sink in like it does if you draw the lines yourself.
That's awesome. Al had a great effect on my life, a great impact. I got to know Al when I was in Dallas Fort Worth, and he was so kind to spend. I was very young, and he spent a lot of time with me. And I look back on that, and people like him. I need to make a list of the people that really had a big impact in my career, and Al is certainly one of them. And I miss him greatly. Al, you had dementia, and it was a tough thing for a lot of us to see him kind of go out that way. But boy, he was good, Lon. He was just so good. And he had a passion for people too.
The day of the 27 tornado outbreak in north central Texas, which was December 29, 2006, Al was attending his father's funeral. His father died of early onset Alzheimer disease. And that's what took Al out several years later. It was sad. I mean, somebody with a mind like his and an ability to communicate. There in the day that goes by that I don't somewhere along the way say, what would Al think about this? Or he had a huge influence on my interest in meteorology, taking it beyond chasing storms to predicting storms or warning for storms.
First time I ever saw Al was in remember there was a video called Terrible Tuesday
Yeah.
Yep.
about the Wichita Falls, Texas tornado of 1979. And Al made an appearance in that thing. And I thought, man, I'd like to meet that guy one day. And
You
moved to
did.
Texas and got a chance to know him. And goodness, it was just a great thing. But Lon, we got to roll some recorded segments. So this is your chance to plug away. Plug, man. Plug your Twitter, Facebook, whatever you want to plug. Go.
Oh, I'd really rather plug a couple of things that I use every day. For those who are really deep into meteorology, but maybe not employed in it, there is a product called Digital Atmosphere that is put out by Weather Graphics. Tim Vasquez is the owner and originator of that company. And that's what I use
Former
to do.
TV guy, former Air Force.
Yep, that's right.
In Abilene, he worked at the station I worked at a number of years before I got there.
And the other product that I am sold on, and on my iPhone, I have one radar app. But what I use when I am dealing with severe weather here locally is a product called GR Level 2 Analyst. GR standing for Gibson Ridge. Mike Gibson.
Yep.
What a story that guy has to tell, because he comes out of a career writing software for medical analysis, and just in passing asked somebody in weather about radar, because that looks a lot like our x-rays and sonograms, and don't you do this, don't you do that? And I happen to think that that GR Level 2 Analyst is the be all and end all. It's not cheap.
Now, don't give it all away, Lon, because you have to do a pick of the week here before the show is over. So don't give everything
I've got one
away.
of those also.
Oh, good. All right. Well, let's take a quick break here. We're going to roll Tony Rice and the Astronomy Report. We're going to roll Jen's This Week in Tornado History. We're going to come back with Aubrey in the email inbox. We'll do Picks of the Week. We'll talk with Bruce. We'll have everything. A lot of stuff to go here. So y'all hang on as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
On Tuesday, October 6th, Mars will be closer to Earth than it's been since 2018, and it won't be any closer until 2035. See, Earth and Mars race around the sun. Earth has a pretty consistent lap time of 365 days. Actually, it's 365 days, 5 hours, 48 minutes, and 45 seconds, but that's for another day. Mars is just shy of 687 days. About every 26 months, Earth catches up to and passes Mars. Tuesday, they'll be rubbing fenders from 38.6 million miles away. At that distance, light, as well as any signals from the fleet of orbiters, a lander, a rover, and another on the way, will take about 3.5 minutes to reach Earth. Well, that may seem like a lot. That distance will increase to nearly 22 light minutes by next September. The folks that fly and drive these robots on Mars have had 2020, specifically July through September, circled on their calendars for quite a while. It's a chance to reach Mars with the minimum energy. When you're exploring space, energy is fuel. Fuel is weight. And every gram of fuel that you must add to reach your destination is a gram that you can't use for a camera, sensor, or some other science instrument. And that's why you're going in the first place. So that's why many plans around Mars, including those to send humans there, often mention 2035 for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's far enough in the future that we've got a good chance of solving the myriad of technical problems between us and putting boots on Mars. The other reason is those launch windows. The summer of 2035 should be pretty exciting for Mars exploration because it's ahead of the next perihelic opposition of Mars on September 15th, 2035. Opposition is the point in a planet's orbit where it's directly opposite the sun in our sky. That means it's a lot closer and requires less energy to reach. We see examples of this every month with the full moon, which you could also call a lunar opposition. 2035 is a particularly good year because opposition coincides with Mars' perihelion, or its closest point to the sun. And that reduces the distance a rocket must travel to the red planet to the lowest point since 2003. But in the meantime, Mars is big and bright and just getting brighter ahead of this year's opposition next week. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me at RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
This week in tornado history, an outbreak of 11 tornadoes hit parts of Arizona on October 6, 2010. This was the largest number of tornadoes to strike the state in a single day since records began in 1950. This was also the largest single-day tornado outbreak west of the Continental Divide. Per the NCDC, on average, Arizona receives 4 tornadoes annually. 2 of the tornadoes during this outbreak were given an EF3 rating. Tornado number 4, also known as Belmont West, was the second tornado to impact this community during the outbreak. It is one of the strongest tornadoes in Arizona history and has the longest tornado path recorded in the state at just over 30 miles. Severe tree destruction was found in the forest south of town. Complete blowdown of the forest occurred and trees were even stripped of their bark. As the tornado passed through Belmont, it derailed 28 train cars. The other EF3 was tornado number 9. It had a 4-mile path and developed 20 miles southeast of Tuba City. Despite being in an unpopulated area, it managed to become one of the most intense tornadoes in Arizona state history. 3 500 kilovolt electrical transmission towers were collapsed. One of these large metal towers was ripped from its anchoring and completely flattened to the ground. For the National Weather Service Flagstaff, the winds may have been as high as 165 miles per hour. The Tornado Talk team is in the process of updating some of the older summaries on the website. The original survey from the National Weather Service of this Arizona event found 8 tornadoes, and that is what is listed on the Storm Prediction Center database. We contacted the National Weather Service in Flagstaff, and they said earlier this summer they updated the storm data entry after locating and compiling all the storm survey findings from almost 10 years ago. Check out our in-depth and up-to-date summary of this event at tornadotalk.com.
Well, everyone, welcome back to WeatherBrains tonight as we in Central Time, about 9:30 Central Time. And we do usually do at this hour of the night. We talk to one of the folks that really makes this possible, one of the people that we're very proud to be associated with here at WeatherBrains. And Bruce Jones from Midland Radio, welcome tonight. You know, we've been talking about the Gerald tornado tonight, 1997, and tornadoes. One thing that doesn't change is how the word must get out, how we get how that word gets out in severe weather. And I find it, as I said a few minutes ago and joked, I find it ironical, as we say here in Austin sometimes, that here we are in 2020, the year that continues to give. And here we go, Bruce, with another maybe major hurricane on the Gulf Coast by the latter part of the week. Folks, I mean, I know that Bill really worked hard, and I know that James really worked hard on this, but I think it's so great that we have Midland Radio as one of our partners in all this and our primary sponsor. And Bruce, welcome you tonight and let you talk a little about Weather Radio and how important this is in this year that continues to give.
Yeah. Thank you, Troy. It's been a very, very active year. And you know, just to take you back in history, NOAA Weather Radio was really designed to be an indoor tornado siren. That was the whole idea behind it, to give somebody an alerting device indoors that's going to come on automatically and also has a battery backup, so it'll even come on during a power failure. And this harkens back to the Palm Sunday tornado outbreak of 1965, when the warnings were coming so fast and furious. And that was back in a day when the Weather Bureau at the time would actually put out individual telephone calls to the sheriff of this town, or, you know, the county sheriff in the next county, or to the hospital, or, you know, they were making individual telephone calls to put out tornado warnings. And during the Palm Sunday outbreak, things were happening so fast and furious. Obviously, we needed some kind of alerting system. And so around about that time, they decided, we need to have these indoor tornado sirens. And that's what Weather Radio was designed to be. And then it got a huge boost after the 74 super outbreak, when again, we had just tornado warning after tornado warning. You couldn't keep up with them. And so it became an automated system, an automatic, if you will, smoke detector for storms. The idea being that if every home had one of these, you wouldn't need to be paying attention. This device would kind of pay attention for you, and it would listen in on this broadcast from the National Weather Service, and they didn't have to pick up a phone and call your house. They could alert you with this. So here we are, 50, 60 years later. The network comprises 1,031 transmitters in all 50 states and our 5 U.S. territories. And the signal serves 98% of the U.S. population can pick up a signal from a NOAA transmitter. So our job as meteorologists is just to remind people that, your cell phone is a great way of getting alerts. I have nothing against that. Outdoor sirens are great when you're already outdoors, but you still need to have multiple and redundant ways of getting this information. And NOAA Weather Radio is still the official voice of the National Weather Service, and it's still America's federal warning system. And it still works, and we as meteorologists should still encourage people to get and use these devices because they certainly do save lives.
And Bruce, you always come and you come in a sense bearing gifts with a discount for the WeatherBrains consumer out there around the country. Tell us a little bit about what you can and the interesting thing about Midland radios, the variety of radios you have. But of course, we're concentrating on the weather radios. But tell us a little bit about what you can offer the folks that are watching us or listening to us tonight.
Yeah, we appreciate you listening to or watching WeatherBrains. We know you're very interested in weather. And, as someone who has an interest in weather, you can help us spread this word about being prepared, not only for weather disasters, but, man-made disasters as well. So we encourage you to get a weather radio, encourage your family to get a weather radio. And one way we can do that is to give you a 15% discount. So if you are a listener or viewer of WeatherBrains, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. And if you'll go to midlandusa.com and use the promo code SPAN15, and that's SPANN 15, you can get 15% off any weather radio that you purchase. That white weather radio is a desktop. You put in your code for your county, and it only goes off for your county. Those red emergency crank radios are designed really for hurricane evacuation, where you don't know what county you're in. So you do not program those red crank radios. They just automatically go off for wherever you are. And they also feature AM and FM. So for those of you down along the Gulf Coast with trouble on the way again later this week, make sure that you have one of these emergency crank radios, because not only will it give you life-saving information, but you can use that crank radio to recharge your smartphone when your smartphone battery goes down. So it's an important thing to have in your hurricane go kit, wildfire go kits as well. So 15% off with the promo code SPAN15, SPANN 15, and that's at midlandusa.com.
Well, Bruce,
I have a question about those hand cranked radios. Those are also good, like for like truck drivers who have frequent routes into the Great Plains or the Deep South, especially during tornado season, like maybe a lot of frequent travelers and things like that.
Yeah, and the snowbirds are getting ready to go down to Florida, and Florida has a history of these nocturnal tornadoes in December, January, February. So if you're a snowbird and you're going to be spending the winter in Florida, living out of your RV or your mobile home or whatever, I would strongly recommend that you have a NOAA weather radio, and that emergency crank radio there is a real good one to have. You can listen to the baseball game on AM or FM, but if a warning is issued for the area you're in, that weather radio will kick in and override the broadcast you're listening to. So thanks for mentioning that. That's an important consideration for folks who travel, for folks who are on the road, for folks who go camping. Anywhere you go where there might not be good cell phone coverage, make sure you have one of these emergency crank radios, because it could truly be a lifesaver.
Again, let me just say this too. I mean, a lot of people listening to the show, you're a weather geek, a dweeb. You've got one, but we need you to help us to go tell your neighbors and your family members that don't have one, because I think the number of people that have a weather radio in a tornado prone area, it is shockingly low. And we've all got some work to do. So where I am in Dixie Alley, our tornado season cranks up in a month, less than 1 month in November. And, as the hurricane season fades, the tornado season begins. And where we are, the tornado season basically is November through May. So now's the time to do that. So this is a great opportunity to help us kind of be an evangelist and tell those that just don't pay much attention to the weather that all you need is one of these things. Get it for a discount now. Put a good battery in it, a backup for the white model that most people use in homes. And maybe you can help them program it. And Bruce, that's one more thing I wanted to mention. You don't have to have somebody from a TV station or an emergency manager to program these things. It's not that hard.
No, it's not. But I'll tell you, today I think we programmed over 1,000 radios for Marin County, California. Marin County has made a big weather radio purchase for fire warnings. Because again, what's happening out in California, James, is these cell phone towers, the majority of them around the San Francisco Bay Area do not have battery backup on them. And so when Pacific Gas and Electric, PG&E, starts turning off the power to try to prevent these wildfires, they end up turning off the cell towers that people are relying on to get their fire warnings. So Marin County, Sonoma County, City of Santa Rosa, all making weather radio purchases now to give to their citizens. So you're right. We need to spread the word that these things do work. They're lifesavers. Please help us get out there and be evangelists for the Weather Ready Nation.
And Bruce, I think it was Bill that mentioned a couple of weeks ago, getting to be the season. Nothing wrong with gifting these things either, to give them to people that is gifts and making perhaps a difference in their lives.
Yeah, people kind of kid you about being a weather geek when you give these things as presents. I give them all the time, and then I don't get them for free. I have to buy them just like you do, but I give them all the time for gifts, and people kind of josh me about, oh, well, what would I expect from a weatherman? But you know what? Occasionally, a couple of years later, you'll get that thank you call that weather radio really did come in handy and really did give them peace of mind or protection.
Bruce, thank you for everything that y'all do at Midland, and appreciate your sponsorship of WeatherBrains. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
And hang out with us for a few minutes.
Will do.
Yeah. Hey, and it's time to dig into the email inbox, and there might be something in there.
Letters. We get letters. We get stacks and stacks of letters.
We've got a couple of them. All right, this one comes in from Awesome Gamer. That's what I got. Hey, James and Aubrey, I was wondering if you can bring in JP Dice from Fox 6 in Birmingham on the show sometime.
Let's do it. He's a great guy. JP has been in this business a long time. He's a great communicator, and I will try and make that happen.
All right. This next one comes in from Harvey Day Jr. Harvey thinks that I, as well as Troy, might like this. This is The Perfect Storm, Rebuilding Paradise. And Bill said that he saw it. It was a great film. He saw it as part of his film documentary thing that he does. And it's on YouTube, a great link about the wildfires and Paradise rebuilding after such a horrible tragedy, which so many more communities are going to be doing now. So that is what I see in the inbox. If you have an email for us, a link, a guest suggestion, let us know. Email at weatherbrains.com. We'd love to hear from you. And we love your content of maybe something we haven't seen before, or a cool link or a cool story. We appreciate it. Email at weatherbrains.com.
So, but before we do picks of the week or anything else, so we're all going to go around the horn. Everybody's going to say the top sustained wind speed with Delta during its life cycle and the point of landfall. And next Monday night, we'll all come back and revisit this. So I want to start with the smartest man on the panel here, Dr. Adelot. And he hung up on us.
Oh, gosh. I'm thinking, probably Mississippi Delta, and let's just go high-end Cat 2. Do you need to be more specific than that?
Yes, I need a number.
I'm probably going to tell you a number that's not high-end Cat 2. Let's go 110. I don't deal with too many hurricanes here.
Well, I don't care. You're about to be a post hole digger guy. All right. So, and again, this is the maximum sustained wind during its life between now and the time it's inland, not at the time of landfall.
Okay, let me go 130.
Okay, 130. All right, Nate, you're another smarty on here. What you got?
I'm gonna sort of play a little bit of reverse psychology on this thing and figure that if I pick roughly the same place that Laura went, it'll leave those poor people alone. So we'll go with Cameron Parish. Yeah, we'll go with Cameron Parish, Louisiana, and a max win of its life of 140. I think it's in just a prime spot. I don't think it hits at 140, but I think it peaks.
All right. Okay, Jen, what you got?
I was thinking 140 as well, and I was going to go south.
You can't have it. You take 139 if you want. But...
Come on, man. Please share 140 with me.
Fine, but you can't have Cameron Parish.
And I was going to go south of Homa.
Okay.
That area.
All right. Aubrey, what you got?
I was actually going to go 140, but you know what? I'm going to change mine. I'm going to go 143.
Yes.
You're like that contestant on The Price is Right.
Probably that annoying one. Yeah.
Troy's going to bid $1 and he's going to win.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking, kind of where Jen was talking about, maybe just a little south of Lafayette there. It's pretty close to the NHC track, which, you hate for it to go further east. You get a New Orleans, more impact. Further west, you get Lake Charles. They were just hit, and it's just not good either way.
All right, Lon, what you got?
Oh goodness, I'm thinking a little more recurvature. So I think probably somewhere between New Orleans and Mobile, Biloxi, and in through there. It looks to me like the flow aloft will turn it a little more eastward as it comes across the Gulf. But who am I?
Maximum wind velocity.
135.
135.
But what do we know? We're just meteorologists.
Yeah. Where's Nash Roberts when you need him? And I don't even know if anybody knows who Nash Roberts is.
I read the book.
Old timers know who Nash Roberts is. And he
you
worked at
WWL.
I am. He worked at Channel 4 New Orleans for forever. And he was the best. But I got 145 at Pass Christian, Mississippi. So we're going to leave it at that, and we'll see how it works out.
How many times has Pass Christian been hit? Good grief.
I think of Camille in 1969. And and listen, the hardest part, it's the forecasting the impact. All these numbers, doesn't matter. The 4, 3, 1, 2, whatever. I mean, it's the impact.
Yeah.
And we talked about this on the show last week. A lot of people in the path of Sally did not feel as though they were adequately warned for the severity of the wind and the intensity of the whole thing and the duration of the whole thing. And, we've got to focus on impact here. And the question is, if this thing ramps up to a category 5 or a 4, which it probably will in the Southern Gulf, does it come apart? Does it pull a Lily where it fizzles out, Opal, which weakened, or is it going to be a Michael that maintains its strength? And that's going to be the hard part. And I would not want to be sitting in the chair of our, the Hurricane Center and dealing with what they're doing with down there. So it's going to be a very interesting week of weather watching. But we have to do picks of the week. Ladies and gentlemen, this is that magical time of the show where we go around the horn and we share a pick involving weather. And before we do that, real quick, James, we need 5 minutes with you before we do that. Tell us about Tulsa TV. How long you been there? Wild weather market. What's some of the wildest stuff you've worked in Tulsa?
We've been really lucky not to have acute disaster in Tulsa weather-wise. The last 2 weeks of last May were more like a marathon with repeated flooding, tornado, river flooding, and flash flooding events, and kind of all around the clock too. I've been here now about 12 years. I was at NBC5 in Dallas for about 4.5 years. And prior to that, I did mornings at the CBS station here in Tulsa. I'm from here. I actually grew up in a house that is about 5 minutes from the station. My sweet mom still lives there. And so I tell people I've come a long way in the world. It's about 5 minutes or so.
Do we get to take a field trip to see mom next year?
Yeah, probably so. We'll send you over there.
What was it like working with Finn Frock at Channel 5?
He's just the greatest. The dude had so much vacation time. I think I filled in for him more than I actually worked with him.
I think they owe me 10 years. I've not had a vacation day since last year. It just, you accumulate this stuff and it is never going to happen. But no,
I think it's a curse for those of us that enjoy our work, right? That I had Greg Fischel when I was interning back at WRAL back in the 90s. He said, find a job that you're really passionate, that you love going to it, and you'll never work a day in your life. And that's the way I look at the job I have now. It's the way I looked at my last job. I mean, I really feel blessed and I think most of us can say the same, that we're in a line of work that we're passionate about. We'll probably be doing it anyway, even maybe not with the cameras and everything else, but we'd be doing this stuff anyway, even with it. So,
pretty good.
I can't wait to come to work every day. But James, Tulsa is a very aggressive severe weather market. You guys just do a great job.
I've heard it described as it's all of the severe weather of the Oklahoma City market, but only about a third of the size, and so it's manageable.
Oh, thank heavens for that. Yeah, and ours climatologically is nearly always after dark. So we get the stuff that fires peak heating on the dry line, I-35 or west. I mean, talking about big outbreaks that affect us, and rolls our way after dark. We're kind of in that place, no man's land, if you will, between supercell tornadoes and QLCS tornadoes. So instead of one or the other, we're blessed with having both. Yeah. So, yep, we've done a lot with staff, trying to get everybody up to speed on kind of short-term QLCS stuff, because that is kind of our biggest whack-a-mole nemesis right now, dealing with severe weather. But it's a great TV market. As we talked about, it's a mid-size market and it's great. I get to come home and at least start helping get my kids ready for bed. I've got a 8-year-old and a 7-year-old. So life is very busy, but thankfully I love being here, not only because it's home and I know how to say all the crazy place names around here, but it's home and it's a very good place to raise a family. And I'm 2.5 hours from my in-laws, which is probably just about right.
How many are on your team, James?
We have 4.
And you can get some pretty nasty ice storms and winter storms too.
Yeah, when you were asking about forecast busts, I immediately go to any winter P-type because it'll be a bust somewhere in my DMA. I may get it right in one spot and it's just a complete disaster 20 miles away. So, I mean,
sleep ruins everything.
Nightmare. Oh, it's awful.
I tell the young people that when there's a winter storm situation in these southern markets down here, you are automatically going to be wrong somewhere within the DMA, and you'll probably be right somewhere in the DMA. And the object is to be more right than wrong. But you got, in one side of Tulsa, you might have a cold rain, the other side a crippling ice storm. And how do you define that line 2 days in advance?
Yeah, you can't. We had one 2 winters ago. I think it was 2 winters ago. And you could watch on ZDR using dual pole radar, the P-type line working slowly eastward across the city of Tulsa. It got 1 mile west of the station and started working back to the west again. What do you do?
Oh, there's no way. Yeah. There's no hope. All right. Well, listen, guys, I'm the lead story. I got to walk across the hall and put on some TV duds. So we have many professional announcers here. So somebody take it and do picks of the week. Go. Somebody take it and run with it.
All right. Picks of the week.
Yeah.
I'm going to give myself the foghorn. So,
whoa, I'm hit
still
the here.
Hit the foghorn. Go on.
Okay.
I'm waiting.
Let me pull up the soundboard here.
I'll have one for Nate.
No, I want the foghorn.
No. He wants the foghorn. He'll get the foghorn.
There we go. All right. I'm just going to go across in my order. Bruce Jones, pick of the week from you, sir.
I would suggest that everybody check out the CAL FIRE website because it's really phenomenal how many fires are actively burning and what they've burned in the state of California so far this year. 4 million acres now, which doubles their previous record for acres burned. But CAL FIRE has a great website. You click on the incidents and then you can zoom in on the map, gives you all the information and details about all the incredible wildfires they're fighting right now.
That might be a good topic for us to have on the show at some point, or the incident meteorologists from the Weather Service. So we've talked to them in the past, but it's been such a busy year to talk about fire weather. It'd be really a cool show to have, very topical. Jennifer, pick of the week.
First of all, I want to make a quick comment about what we were talking about earlier in regards to trying to bond with your community and learning all the different names is really difficult in radio when you're on 60 to 65 cities across the country to try to not mess up the names and all that kind of stuff. And I wanted to say that one of the first corrections I ever got was when I was on in KLBJ in Austin, and it was burn it, darn it. I learned that very quickly that it's burn it. So I wanted to mention that. I think, Lon, I think you heard me in KLBJ. We talked about that. You're like, you sound familiar when we first talked. And speaking of Austin, my pick of the week is my favorite summary on the Tornado Talk website written by Mr. Lon Curtis. And it's on the Austin, Texas tornadoes of May 4th, 1922. And he goes through what happened that day and has some wonderful pictures. And the paths, they were parallel paths, really good write up. It's one of my favorites. So Lon, it was so wonderful to have you on the show tonight. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
And Lon, you're next up on my list. A pick of the week from you, good sir.
I'm going to go way back to a book that was published 20 years ago that I think anyone in meteorology ought to read. And it's Isaac's Storm by Eric Larson. It's about the Great Galveston Hurricane and the aftermath of that. And the reason I think it's relevant and it's worth reading, maybe even a second time, is that the devastation that occurred there, the loss of life that occurred there, could occur again. We tend to look back, I think, on disasters in the past and say, well, that wouldn't happen today. But as the climate changes and as storms become more numerous and stronger, I really think it's a good read, and for even teenagers who are interested in weather, I wouldn't go below teenagers, I don't think, because a lot of the commentary is sad. But that's my pick of the week.
And I actually had a guy on my master's committee whose research his research interest was centered around whether organizations like governments and whatnot actually learn from disasters. And he found that more often than not, we don't. We don't learn as much as we think we do from time to time. So really a pertinent pick there. Troy Kimmel, pick of the week, sir.
I've got a non-weather one tonight, Nate, which I really think is cool. I don't know if you've seen this, but it's gotten a lot of press over the last 12 hours or so. Over at Gizmodo, Brian Kahn has written an article, and again, it's all over the place. National Geographic Society has done it. But wildlife managers are bringing back into Australia the Tasmanian devils. They have, for many years, been out of Australia. This is the first time in 3,000 years they've been brought back, they say. Mainly because the Tasmanian devils in Tasmania are being wiped out by a form of cancer. And what they're doing is bringing them back to Australia to control feral cats, believe it or not, which have gotten out of control in that part of Australia. So it's actually a great article. You'll have to see the picture to understand this, but there's a great picture, Nate, on the very top of Brian's article of a very angry Tasmanian devil. And for some reason, it reminded me about some members of my family. So anyway, that was
not the cute little cuddly thing from the Looney Tunes back.
No, these things have a grip and a half and some ugly looking teeth. And
they look like
this
fishers.
picture reminds me of people in the family. So.
All right, Aubrey, pick of the week.
All right, mine is a tweet. Apparently there is a beautiful but powerful tornado in Belgium today. The wrap on that mesocyclone was quite incredible. And that was not the only one in Europe. If you scroll down through the comments, you can see video of a tornado also today in Slovakia. So
wow.
Some interesting tornadoes
in Europe
across the pond.
All right, James Adelot, PHC.
Hey, do I just hit share screen and go over to it?
Sure. I don't know. James may have to let you,
Yeah,
so you may just have to.
Yeah.
Well, the Venice dikes, the dam went up to prevent a flood 3 days ago, and it actually worked. It's the first time they've actually used them, and the Aqua Alta, I believe, is what that high tide water is called over there. It actually worked. It's the first time. I think it's MOSE is the name of the project to put they're raisable pneumatic dam that they put over to keep the Adriatic, I believe, out of the
If I'm not mistaken, they have something similar to control floodwaters for the Riverwalk in San Antonio. Something a smaller scale, but something similar.
And a bonus picture for you, Nate. We are rolling headlong into a La Nina weather pattern, which probably means a very busy spring for me. Oh boy.
See what that does for winter weather across the country as well. So see how things go. Well, any other business before we wrap it up tonight? All right. Well, this is WeatherBrains, the original, longest running, and well, we think it's kind of the best all weather netcast podcast, whatever you want to call it. We normally record the show live via Zoom on Monday nights, 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central, 7:30 Mountain, 6:30 Pacific. And it's available on all of your favorite podcast platforms the day after. Also, weatherbrains.com. You can find all of the picks of the week, bios of our speakers, and all sorts of other cool stuff there. Check us out, weatherbrains.com. We're also on the Facebook, the Twitter, MySpace, TikTok, Parler, and all of the other fun social media platforms. Just find us there. AOL, yes, James, AOL's there as well. So we appreciate everybody listening. Appreciate you being here. Lon Curtis, James Adelot, glad to have you on the program this week. I appreciate you sharing an hour and a half with us. We're actually coming up on 2 hours now, and we'll see you around the bend. Otherwise, have a good week. See you next week. Take care. Good night. God bless. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
show.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, guys.
Had a great time.
Thanks, Lon.
Thank
Good
y'all.
to see you.
Thanks, Lon. Great job.
Thanks,
Thank
James.
you.
So long.
Peace.
Ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah. Great show tonight. Great to have Lon on and James Adelot from Tulsa. And we are in the middle of the newscast here. Just had to come back here and say good night. And if you want to join us over on Song of the Night on Instagram, I'm Span WX. We'll crank that up here in a few minutes after the weather segment. So great show. We'll see you guys next Monday night. Have a great week. Thanks for watching and God bless. Bye-bye, everybody.